So happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there today. And good morning, everybody. Good morning again to all you out there on Facebook Live and all of my beautiful viewers out there on WMGO 1370 AM on right here in Canton, Mississippi. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And I pray that you have the best day ever. You enjoy your day. And that today, excuse me, today you tell that person that you love them so much and that you can't wait to live and share the day with them. What an awesome day to be. Today's biblical principle is going to be tough because we're going to talk to and me about each other. Today's principle deals with us and who we are. It might get a little sticky sometimes, so at his toes, it is not intentional. Yeah, but we're going to have a way because today we're going to learn how to be who we're supposed to be. Here, my name is Reverend at Harvest Support Christian Center. We do three things. We teach the Word of God, and we teach it to inspire hope, and hopefully people will live in their purpose. We believe if we teach the Word, we can inspire people to be more hopeful about tomorrow, that they can raise up every morning knowing that God birthed and woke them this morning with a purpose, and that life is going to be a great day today. All they have to do is learn to trust God, walk according to his principles, and all things will indeed work together for the good. Also, I want to share with you that today's principle is brought to you by a new sponsor we have, and we're so thankful that they've decided to come on and share with us in this ministry. If you need tax preparation, business startup, notary services, safe search certification, and even legal documents, leases, contracts, wills, bill of sales, divorces, whatever it is, power of attorneys. If you go by a little bit of something, LLC 821 East Peach Street, right here in Canton, Mississippi, and you see Teresa, because Teresa has a hand on this, and she's got services that are going to make your business run better, make your life run better, make sure we have all of our paperwork in order. If you need faxing done, copying and printing done, scans and emails, laminations, even envelopes, and coming soon, because this lady is convicted to live and serve the community. So coming soon from a little bit of something LLC, located at 821 East Peach Street, right here in Canton, is going to be basic computer skills, especially for our elderly people, iPhone certifications and iPhone training. Will not be disappointed. You will be blessed, and you will know where everything is when the time comes that you need to put your hands on things, especially somebody like me. Thank you so much, Teresa, for joining us, and we look forward to working with you here at Harvest Support Christian Center, as well as WMGO 1370 on the AM. Okay, today I need you to put your tough skin on. I need for you to lay aside your little fragilities, because today we're going to talk about each other, and we're going to do it openly, and we're going to do it together. So we won't be saying anything behind your back that you can't go back and say they were talking about me behind my back. No, we're not. This is to you right now. Let me share with you something, that a principle that if you apply this principle to your life, I guarantee you, you will start having success in everything you do, because there's no failure in God. Here's a simple principle that's dictated to us from the Sermon on the Mount. It's called the Beatitudes, is what most of us refer to it as. In verse number 6, in particular, in the Beatitudes, we hear Jesus say, "Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." You know, every sermon ought to have a main point and a point that drives us to Christ. That right there is what brings us to the heart of the Beatitudes. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus begins this sermon of his with a series of teachings on what has become known to all of us today as the Beatitudes. And at the center of this sermon, if you will, is a verse that identifies who we are to become and what we should be doing. It identifies who we are to become and what we should be doing. All of the Beatitudes coming out of this sermon points to verse 6, and all of the following Beatitudes will flow out of verse 6. Stay with me. There, when you look at this sermon that Jesus delivered upon the mount, there's a masterful point that Jesus is driving home to us. And these are the BE attitudes. And they're not called the DO, do attitudes, but it's to be, then to do. Being who you are comes before doing what you do. Because what we do is always determined by who we are. I wish I had some help on that one, because a lot of us don't know who we are yet, but that's why we search the scriptures to find our space, not place. When we consider the Beatitudes, we can see that they are not a set of rules, such as the 10 Commandments would have set aside for us to live by. The 10 Commandments, when we look at those 10 Commandments, they have to do with actions, the things that we do. The Beatitudes, on the other hand, have to do with our attitude. So if we look at the 10 Commandments, they have to do with our conduct, how we conduct ourselves, how we should walk and live with Christ. The Beatitudes, on the other hand, have to do with our character. We do what we are. The question then becomes, why is it so important that we as believers have these Beatitudes birthed into our very beings? Why is it so important for us to know who and what we should be in order to know what we should be doing? So, character. I hope I want to say it again. It's important for us to have these Beatitudes in us, because our actions flow from our attitudes, and our conduct flows out of our character. So why do we? So let's stop for a moment and think and reflect on that, and then let's take a journey, and let's walk down the pathway toward becoming the spirit-controlled, spirit-filled person that God is seeking for us to be. How do we become? Let's go back. How do we walk in purpose? Now, that's a great question for you this morning. This pathway that we're going to start today leads us to a life of blessing. And it begins in Matthew chapter 3. It begins with verses 3 through 5. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, that's how we start on this journey to become spirit-filled, spirit-controlled, spirit-led, and followers indeed of Christ. It begins with the first beatitude: blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, when we say poor, we're not talking about materialistic things. We're not talking about cars, money. We're not talking about homes, clothes. Being poor in our spirit is what we're talking about. That is, we are blessed because we're the ones who realize and recognize that our total dependency falls upon Christ. We need him every single day to help us accomplish unless he brings his spirit to us, and then we become a part of who he is. So we are blessed when we are poor in spirit, because he searches for us. He drives to get to us, to draw us closer to him. And the next step in this journey is found in the second beatitude: blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. It is not enough to simply realize that without Christ, we are poverty-stricken spiritually. Blessings come from the fact that we are burdened by it, that it bothers me, that I have to deal with it every day. I want more in my relationship with Christ. I have become grieved because of my spiritual condition, that I am so far from him and understanding who he is. And I actually mourn over the fact. I cry about it sometimes. And I'm talking, this is how we should be, how we should respond and react to it. Isaiah said, woe is me, when he thought about how unclean his lips were. Job said, I abhor myself. I don't even like me when I see myself as compared to who God is and my connection to him. And even Peter, who loved the Lord, said, depart from me, for I am a sinful man. I mean, when we recognize who we are, we realize how poor in spirit we really are, but how willing God is and Christ is to bring his spirit unto us and draw us closer to him so that we become more like him. We learn to walk with him and see the world the way he sees it, and understanding that God is going to get us through every situation. Doesn't matter what it looks like, how long we've been here, or how badly we've performed in it. He is still ready to bring us out of it because he loves us just that much. And the final step, and this part of the pathway in the beginning stage, if you will, is blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What does that look like? The picture of a Greek word that we translate into English as meek is of an animal that has been tamed. For example, a wild stallion that is ridden and broken by a cowboy, so it begins to go, turn, stop with the slight movement of the cowboy's hand. The stallion's will has been broken and submitted to the master's will. And so it is with believers who realize that we under the control of the master, such as our will is lost and his will, not my will, but thy will be done, Lord. Then we join Jesus in his Gethsemane plea. Lord, just whatever your will is for me, take it. Use me for your will, for your way. I surrender all to you. We say that, we sing that song, but do we really mean it? Ourselves when we say, I surrender all. And when we get to this fourth beatitude, the one that this is all about, when we talk about blessed are those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. It is not those people out there that are hungry. They are not the ones that are thirsting for happiness who are being satisfied. It is those who strive for the righteousness of Christ in our own lives that is going to be satisfied. You cannot find satisfaction in Christ if you're trying to fulfill the daily appetite of what makes you feel good and happy. Because sometimes there's some joy in knowing that I have to suffer for a little while, knowing God is going to raise me up in the due season. Not just me, but all of us, Paul says. The real crazy thing about this is that the satisfied ones are those who have arrived at righteousness, but those who are hunger and thirsting for it. Don't ever think you've gotten it. Don't ever think that, oh, yeah, I've earned it. I've learned. I've made it. You've now. There is a paradoxical principle here. The believer is the one who's thirsting, who's hungry, and who's striving for it. And at the same time, filled in the very process. You're constantly being filled, but you want more and more. How many of you right now are not satisfied with your walk with Christ, are not satisfied with your involvement in the local church? How many of you are not satisfied because you haven't attained that love for everyone that Christ has? Because you can very easily see people who are in need and turn your head because they don't look like you. They don't talk like you. They don't think like you. But when you start loving people the way Christ loved them, you look beyond all of that. And all you see is love. By this, the Bible declares that all men shall know you are my disciples when you have love one for another. And that don't mean loving the folk that love you. It don't mean just loving the folk that you can to, loving the folk that you go to church with. You got to love everybody. Doesn't matter what side of town they come from. Doesn't matter what they look like, tall, short, fat, ugly, skinny. It doesn't matter. Love looks beyond faults because Lord knows God looked beyond our faults. Romans chapter 5 teaches us that for scarcely will a man die for somebody righteous, but Christ died for us while we were still sinners, alienated from God. How much of that love can you show somebody today when you next time you go to the store and you see somebody struggling to get a bill and you have the money to help and you refuse? How many times have you seen someone trying to cross the street, but you was in such a hurry, you blew the horn at them instead of slowing down and let them get across? Love is what separates us from the ones who are seeking for happiness. We're seeking for God's righteousness. A hungry man is a humble man. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Those being filled with God's best are those who are hungering and thirsting for the things of God with a humble heart and a humble spirit. When you're thirsting after God, you take every opportunity you can get to find out more, to learn more, to come closer to Him. I'm not telling you that you got to be at the church every time the door is open. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you got to be so heaven bound that no earthly good. But every opportunity that you have to find another look at God, to get closer to Him, you ought to take it. You ought not let things separate you from knowing God and learning more about Him. You ought not let things stop you from coming to church on Sunday morning, or not just coming to church, but coming to Christ on Sunday morning. The problem is a lot of us come to church on Sunday morning. We show up and we walk through the door in the building, but we didn't come to Christ. We came to the building. What we need to do is separate coming to the building from coming to Christ, because there is a huge difference in hungering and thirsting for Christ than it is for hungering and thirsting to be seen at the building. Once we get those things figured out, once we start walking with those things, we can see that there is an immense difference in our lives and change in how we see and view the world. Because when we look through the eyes of God, we see what God sees. And I promise you, as long as we're looking through natural eyes, you will never see what God sees, because the carnal mind cannot grasp spiritual things, and the spiritual mind ain't dwelling with the carnal. So we have to come out and come in to relate with Christ. Another thing we have to look forward to is living out the spirit-controlled life of blessings. Have you considered that? The first proof of the first, the pathway. And the middle one shows us the passageway. Now, these final four Beatitudes shows us the proof that a person is living the spirit-controlled life. And this is where I've been trying to get to. Let's talk about us. Are we living a spirit-controlled life? And when I say spirit control, I mean Holy Spirit. I don't mean those evil spirits and spirits that are contrary to the will of God. But are we living a Holy Spirit-filled life? The first proof, if we are, is going to be found in verse 7. It says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." Having received mercy in our first place for ourselves, it ought to give us a desire and thirst for righteousness for someone else. Our first reaction is to show mercy to those who are around us. We cannot continue to look up on people and consider them beneath us when we realize that God sat up on his throne and decided that in order for me to reunite with James and John and everybody else on earth, I've got to go down to them and become like them. Show me someone who is hungering for righteousness, and I'll show you someone who is showing mercy, that I can treat them the way God treats me. On the other hand, show me somebody that has no mercy to other people, and I'll show you someone who has not walked down that pathway of blessings with Christ, and let alone he's not entered into the passageway of walking with Christ. Psalms 23 will not apply to that person because the Lord does not become their shepherd when they are not walking circumspect with him. The next proof of spirit-controlled life is found in verse 8. Verse 8 says, blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. Let me tell you something. That's a verse right there we ought to spend a lot of time on in church, because a lot of people are under misguided conception. If I live right, I'll see God and go to heaven. Well, number one, you can't live right, because if you could live right, Christ wouldn't have had to die for you. You would have been able to do it on your own. Number two, I doubt very seriously if any of us have gotten out of bed this morning and here it is 10 minutes to 10 and we've not messed up and sinned in some way. So obviously we cannot live right. So if we can't live right, how can we make it to heaven and see God? Blessed are the pure in heart. It becomes as natural as water running downhill for an individual who is chasing after God to have a pure heart in motives and morals. There again, the Ten Commandments tells us what to do. The Beatitudes are going to tell us how we ought to get it done. Our attitude, our morals, and our motives ought to be the same as Christ would be if he was in our place. We often ask the question, what would Jesus do? Why don't we ever ask, what would James do? What would Sam, Ralph, Mary, Sue? If Christ lives in us, if Christ abides in us, and his word abides in me, and I abide in him, wouldn't I do the same thing he would do? I shouldn't have to ask what I already know. No one has to tell you you're hungry. You know you're hungry when your stomach starts to growl or you get weak. No one has to tell you what Christ would do if you study the word, walk with him, and you know. Another proof of a spirit-controlled life is found in verse number 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the Son of God. If you walk into your church tomorrow, how many people would point to you and say, there goes a peacemaker? How many people would look at you and say, there goes a person that wants to be with one accord with everybody else? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Notice here that Christ gives a blessing on the peacemakers and not on the peace lovers. Hello, somebody. Let me say that again. He's putting a blessing on the peacemakers and not on the peace lovers. We can declare all day long how much peace we want, but how willing are we to work at it to have it? People who are peacemakers are the active ones who are seeking unity among the family of God. Those are the ones that will not let you say derogatory things about another member of the church. That's a peacemaker. Some people say, well, I just didn't want to say nothing. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. Then you're not, you like peace, but you don't want to work for it. People who are peacemakers are active and simply seeking the unity in the church. Remember the question was asked a few weeks ago. Can a church grow without unity? No, because there's too much division. And we see here that those who are peacemakers are called sons of God. How many of you want to be called that? How many of you want God to look upon you as sons or daughters and not just church members? They're recognized by others for being peacemakers. There's some folk in the church say, well, you better not go ask Mother Mary, because Mother Mary's going to tell you like it is, or Mother Sue is going to put you in your place. Or somebody will say, let me go over there and tell James, because he can't keep nothing anyway. Show me a person who tries to sow seeds of discord, and I'll show you someone who is not thirsting for the things of God. On the other hand, you show me some believers who are pursuing God's heart, and I will show you people living in love and unity with everyone around them. Because it's hard to be angry with somebody who's continually showing you love, who continually showing you the signs of Christ. I will show you people living in love and unity with them around them because they are looking for God to call them sons and daughters of God. You know, while we meditate on these words of Christ, while we look at these Beatitudes and study them, we should be asking ourselves. So let's do a self-check. Let's look at the man in the mirror for just a few seconds. Am I extending mercy to those who may not be deserving it? Is my heart and my motive pure? When I do get off my high horse and do something for people, what's the reason? What's the motive? Am I a promoter of love and unity with people around me? Or am I a sower of discord and contentment? Do I walk through the doors of the church hoping to uplift somebody, or I can't wait to say something about somebody? But finally, Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs are the kingdom of heaven. So every time somebody jump all over you for doing good, every time you have to put up the fight and carry the bloodstained banner because you did what was right, understand this: there's a better place for you. Show me someone who never encounters spiritual obstacles. I'll show you someone not hungry for the things of God. Yeah, you show me somebody who never have to fight a battle, then the devil ain't bothering you. If you're not meeting the devil head on from time to time, then most likely you're going the same way he's going, and you're one of the same. Most of the time, the proofs of a spirit-controlled life is a spiritual confrontation and even sometimes conflict with Satan for righteousness' sakes. You got to understand that there are going to be days you're going to have to fight. There are going to be days when the battles are going to be strong, tough, outmanned, outgunned, outnumbered. But you got to be steadfast, unmovable, hold your space, because help is on the way. An interesting fact in these Beatitudes is that they began and they end with the same promise. And locked in between verses 1 and verse 10, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Why are we doing all this? Why are we striving so hard to be like Christ? Why are we striving so hard to love our enemies and accept people for who they are, not for what they look like, come from, or what they ought to be, but who they are? Why are we doing all those? Because one of these days we want to see heaven for ourselves. Because if I walk that way down here, it tells me that God is reminding me that I'm not a citizen of earth. I'm just passing through. But my home is in heaven. And that although we live and interact on earth, we are in fact members of another kingdom. We are part of a kingdom that is governed by the things which we cannot see, the things which we can see, not those things. We're governed by what? We live in an upside down world. Remember that the next time the enemy wants to point out to you something that looks fearful, tell him there are angels that you can't see already battling for you. So remember, being comes before doing, because what we do is always determined by who we are, and in most cases, whose we are. Wow. Being who we are determines what we are doing. Who are you? And what are you doing? Ask yourself that question. And when you answer that question, let it be you are a child of the living God and you're doing the things he chose you to do. A better way to put it, at Harvest of Hope, we truly believe we are a kingdom people on a kingdom mission, doing kingdom work under the authority of a king. We love you. Now, the question of the day, I want to get that in, then we're going to get out of here. I've enjoyed it today. Thank you so much for being here. The question of today is, I have lost my question of the day. Are we supposed to obey the 10 commandments today? Since with the 10 commandments and the Beatitudes are contradictory in a way, the answer to that is yes, we are supposed to. And here's the reason why. Christ came to fulfill the law. If he fulfilled the law, then he obeyed all of the commandments. If we obey Christ, we will obey the commandments, plain and simple. That is. Love you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, continue to pray, continue to bleed, continue to support our sponsors, and come and see us at 3091 South Liberty Street, Harvest of Hope Christian Center. Teach the word to inspire hope and living in purpose. God bless you. We'll see you on the other side of through.